Bookmark. I ran into my ex-boyfriend, whom I broke up with 2 years ago, in the middle of a cornfield. He stared at the ear of corn in my hand, his expression twisted and stiff, as if he couldn't quite decide what emotion to settle on. "Is your life really this bad now?" he asked. "If I'd known it would end up like this, why did you even?" Before he could finish, the corn stalks behind me suddenly parted as a shirtless young man emerged. "Do we really have to do the zombie scene here? Isn't this a little too intense?" The July sun blazed straight overhead, its white-hot glare blinding. The heat from the cornfield rose in waves, and my whole body felt flushed with warmth. My heart was on fire, too. I swallowed, my eyes fixed hungrily on Ryan's bare torso, from his sharply defined jawline to his broad, flat shoulders. My gaze trailed downward along the gleaming sweat on his skin, past the perfectly chiseled 8-pack abs, down to the veins that coiled tightly along his arms. Under my gaze, Ryan lowered his head, a faint blush creeping up his face. He stammered out the line he'd memorized by heart, "I want to sleep with you." I frowned. "No, that's not it. You're supposed to say it while glaring at me, with some force. You sound way too soft right now. That's not how Zach would say it at all." Ryan quickly backed off. "But what if someone walks by around here? If someone sees the zombie scene, it wouldn't look good for you. We should probably go back." "I'm not scared. Why are you worrying so much?" I scoffed. "You're such a fuss budget. You look like a rugged, tough guy, but you act like a nervous grandma." "Let's do it again," I said, directing him. "Go crawl in from over there and then come out with the line. Your eyes need to be hungry and aggressive, like you're throwing caution to the wind but still probing." "Got it?" Ryan nodded obediently and crawled back into the cornfield. What a coward. He's probably over there giving himself a mental pep talk again. I waited a while, but he still hadn't come out. Bored, I reached out and snapped off another ear of corn. A soft, sweet fragrance drifted from behind me, but I acted like I didn't notice. Striking a deliberately delicate pose, I lifted my fingers like a flower bud and swayed my hips, continuing to pick corn. Just then a sharp voice interrupted me. "Zombie." I turned around and froze, my eyes widening in shock. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" "Ethan, he's my ex-boyfriend. We were basically childhood sweethearts. He was my next-door neighbor growing up, 2 years older than me. Ever since we were little, he was the model kid, top grades, well-mannered, always helping out around the house after school. The kind of boy our parents constantly used as the gold standard. At first I couldn't stand him. Oh, so you're the smart one. Oh, so you're the polite one. Oh, so you help your mom with chores after school. I banded together with a few of the mischievous kids in our apartment complex and stuffed mud into Ethan's backpack, turning his homework into a complete mess. His mom shrieked, "Who did this?" I only looked away for a second. What kind of brat with no home training would pull something like this? I wasn't fast enough to get away and got caught red-handed. Ethan's mom was fierce and had a flair for dramatic complaints to parents. Every kid in the complex was terrified of her. But just when I thought I was doomed, Ethan stepped up. "Mom, it wasn't a zombie. I did it. I didn't want to do my homework." That was the first time Ethan ever got hit. His pitiful crying echoed from the other side of the hallway. I sat outside our door, bawling even louder than he did. He was 10 that year. I was 8. And just like that, Ethan won my friendship. Later on, Ethan had a sudden growth spurt and started becoming really handsome. Our friendship began to shift. I trailed after him every day like a little puppy. Whenever he introduced me to his classmates, he'd call me his little sister. In front of Ethan, I was always the insecure one. I didn't dare confess my feelings, so I simply acted under the guise of being his little sister. I brought him water during PE class, held an umbrella for him on rainy days, and constantly stuffed snacks into his desk drawer. That's how things stayed, all the way until I started college. That year, my aunt passed away, and Ethan's dad got into a car accident. The medical expenses were overwhelming. Ethan's mom had to quit her job to take care of her husband, and their family's life became even harder. Ethan and I attended college in the same city. He was on the east side, I was on the west. There was no direct subway line between us. It took about 40 minutes by bus with a transfer. I still remember that day clearly. It was snowing heavily. When I arrived at the dorm building where Ethan lived, all the lights inside had already been turned off. He opened the door, looking impatient. Why are you here so late? Go home. You know what's going on with my family. I don't have the energy to fool around right now. I pulled a black plastic bag from inside my coat. Inside was a bundle of cash. I had kept it close to my chest the whole way, so it was still warm from my body heat. I gave Ethan a hopeful smile. This is all the New Year's money I've saved since I was a kid. It's $57,000 in total. I hadn't dared transfer the money electronically. I was afraid my mom would see it on the bank statement. So I withdrew it all in cash. I figured I'd make up an excuse later and say I spent it all. The whole way there, I was on edge, terrified of being robbed. I shoved the bag into Ethan's hands. Here, use this to pay for your dad's medical bills. Don't worry, Ethan. I get $2,500 a month for living expenses. I'll take $1,200, you take $1,300. If we're careful, it'll be enough. Next year, you'll be a senior. You can start your internship and look for a job. Just hang in there for one more year. Everything's gonna be okay. You've got this. Ethan held the black bag tightly, staring at me for a long, long time. The street lamps stretched our shadows out behind us. Snowflakes drifted silently through the air, landing gently on his thin shoulders. I reached out to brush the snow off, but before I could, he suddenly pulled me into a hug. He buried his face in my shoulder, his voice choking. Let's be together. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The entire world stood still in that snowy silence, except for Ethan's breath against my ear and the pounding of my heart like ribs cracking open. I was completely wrapped in the joy of it. The 4 years I spent with Ethan were full of happiness, especially after he graduated and got a decent job. He told me he wanted to make up for everything he owed me. He took me all over the city, every alley, every hidden restaurant. During winter and summer breaks, he traveled with me. Whatever I wanted, he bought. My roommates were always envious, calling him the perfect boyfriend. Zoe, your rich boyfriend sent you milk tea again? You're too lucky, one of them teased. There's one for each of you too, I said, passing them around. Wendy smiled politely. It's okay. Milk tea's not cheap. I'm not thirsty anyway. She tried to refuse as she pushed the drink back toward me, but accidentally knocked over the entire bag. All 4 cups spilled out onto the floor. They had all been packed in one large bag, and now nobody got any. The other 2 roommates frowned and blamed Wendy. Her face flushed with embarrassment. She quickly grabbed her phone and said in a panic, I'm so sorry, Zoe. I'll transfer you the money. No need, I said casually. It's just a small thing. I'll have Ethan order another round. Wendy paused for a second, her face full of envy. That's like $60-70. Ethan must be loaded. Wendy came from a single-parent home. Her mom was extremely strict with her, keeping a tight grip on her allowance. It made Wendy cautious and anxious about everything, and she grew up with a deeply rooted sense of insecurity. I always saw her as a good friend. Whenever I had something fun or tasty, I'd think of her first. But I never imagined that one day she'd become a thorn between me and Ethan. That year, we were in our senior year of college. Wendy came running up to me, visibly excited. I just got accepted by Haisheng Group. I was a little surprised. Isn't that the company Ethan works at? I asked. Wendy nodded, hugging my arm excitedly. He was even my interviewer, and from now on, he'll be my direct supervisor. Zoe, I'm just so happy. You know how I get nervous around people. With my personality, I've always been an easy target. But now that Ethan's looking out for me, I won't have to be scared anymore. I forced a stiff smile. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Just a few days ago, I asked if you'd found a job yet, and you said nothing. Wendy glanced carefully at my face, trying to read my expression. I'm sorry, it's really hard to get into Haisheng. I was afraid if I didn't make it, you guys would laugh at me. Please don't be mad at me, Zoe. I smiled faintly and shook my head. Of course not. It's actually good that you're under Ethan. I'll ask him to keep an eye on you. At first, Ethan would often complain to me about Wendy. He said she was timid, average at best, and constantly made mistakes at work. If I'd known she'd be this much trouble, I wouldn't have hired her just because of you. Now I'm stuck cleaning up her messes. I'd massage his shoulders like a suck-up and laugh. Well, that's what you get for being everyone's rich Ethan. You're too kind. It's not easy for Wendy either. Her whole family's counting on her. But over time, Ethan started mentioning Wendy more and more, and he spent less and less time with me. Wendy's proposal isn't done yet. I won't make it to the movie tonight. Wendy has to present a report this week. That girl's a nervous wreck. She's been running in and out of my office 10 times a day. I need to help her organize everything. I'm not coming over this weekend. But Saturday is my birthday. I hadn't even finished the sentence when the dial tone cut me off. I stared at the black screen in silence. A wave of panic flashed through my chest. We'd been together for 4 years, and this was the first time Ethan didn't spend my birthday with me. What's worse, he completely forgot about it afterward, never even brought it up. That led to a huge argument between us. Wendy, Wendy, Wendy. If you like her that much, why don't you go be with her? I shouted. Ethan's face was cold. I only put up with her because of you. How long are you going to keep acting unreasonable? Tears streamed down my face as I threw the pillow in my arms at him. I don't need you to do anything for me. But from now on, I don't want you spending time with her. If there's ever a conflict between her and me, you have to choose me. Ethan snapped. That's my job. Zoe, you of all people should understand what my work means to me. I'm the only one supporting my family. Same goes for Wendy. We're not like you. We don't have parents cushioning our fall. If you want to play the spoiled princess, go find someone else. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed in the middle of the mess and cried my heart out. I cried for days, until I started wondering if maybe it really was my fault. Ethan was under a lot of pressure. Half of what he earned went to his parents, and the rest he spent on me. He pinched pennies for himself. Aside from his work clothes, everything else he wore was cheap stuff from discount apps. So what if he missed my birthday? It was just a day. Trying to calm myself down, I baked a cake, picked out a bouquet of flowers, and went to his apartment to surprise him. He lived right next to his office, which meant the same long commute from my place, one end of the city to the other. When I stepped out of the elevator, I was shocked to see him smoking by the stairwell. Standing next to him was a slender girl, Wendy. She tilted her head toward him, eyes full of concern. Are you still fighting? Is it because of me? Do you want me to talk to Zoe and explain things? Ethan shook his head and exhaled a cloud of smoke. Stop babying her. Wendy stuck out her tongue. She is a bit temperamental. She hesitated, then asked softly, Ethan, why do you even like her? I don't mean she's a bad person, she added quickly. She's smart and all, but I mean, in terms of looks and ability, you could do so much better. Ethan went quiet. His long fingers pressed out the cigarette on the metal railing. With a bitter smile, he said, Maybe it's out of gratitude. Back then, I really had no other way out. He told Wendy the whole story, how I'd helped him through that time in his life. I knew what he meant, but she wasn't the one I liked. That night, he probably planned to give her an answer. Wendy looked at him with such pity. You gave yourself away for 57 grand? Ethan, your life is so much bigger than that. He gave a bitter laugh, eyes filled with a kind of quiet emptiness. This is the life I've got. I couldn't listen anymore. Is being with me that unbearable? I shouted, storming forward with the bouquet in hand. I smashed the cake into Ethan's face and jabbed Wendy in the shoulder with the flowers. You're supposed to be my best friend. What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm not good enough for Ethan? But you are? Wendy burst into tears and dove into Ethan's arms. That's not what I meant, Zoe. It's not what you think. Ethan shielded her with one arm and pushed me back with the other. That's enough, Zoe. He didn't hold back. The shove was hard. I stumbled backward, my arm slamming against the sharp edge of a fire cabinet behind me. A long gash tore down the back of my upper arm. Blood poured down my arm, and I burst into tears. You hit me, I shouted. Ethan froze. You're hurt. Does it hurt? I didn't mean to. Let me take you to the hospital. Get away from me. We're done. Don't touch me with your filthy hands. I turned and ran. Tears streamed down my face as blood dripped from my hand, all the way to the ground. It looked awful. Ethan chased me for a few steps, but then Wendy suddenly collapsed. He had no choice but to scoop her up and take her back to his apartment. He didn't come after me again. I waited downstairs for a long time, still holding on to the faint hope that he'd come out and explain everything. But the blood kept flowing, and my body grew colder and colder. As the sky gradually darkened, The sun suddenly dropped below the horizon, plunging the world into a pool of darkness. That's when I knew it was truly over between us. The next day, Ethan called me dozens of times. I declined every call. After I blocked him, he came to my apartment and begged to talk. He said that, yes, at first he had only been with me out of gratitude, but over time, he had genuinely fallen for me. I didn't mean what I said in front of Wendy, he said. I guess I was just being dramatic, trying to look noble or something. I don't even know why I said that. I stared at him, my eyes still swollen like walnuts. You wanted to impress Wendy, so you made yourself out to be some tragic hero while distancing yourself from me. That's what guys always do, right? Trash their girlfriends in front of other women. Say things like, I'm not that into her, or our relationship isn't that great. Don't pretend you don't know exactly what you were doing. Then I locked the door and refused to listen to another word. Ethan kept changing numbers, sending me message after message every day, apologizing over and over. He started showing up outside my apartment after work. Eventually, I quit my job and moved to another city just to finally be free of him. It's been almost 2 years since then. Ethan looked me up and down, his eyes landing on the ears of corn in my hand. His brows furrowed. You're hauling corn now? This is my dad's hometown, I said. Shiahe village. Ethan's aunt had married into this village. When we were kids, we used to come here every summer. We'd catch fish, go crawdad fishing, dig for clams. It was one of the happiest times in my childhood. There's a clean, winding stream that cuts through the village. The water's excellent. A couple of recent college grads came back to start businesses and began cultivating organic corn along the banks. It's been pretty successful. I'd brought Ryan here for some fresh air and farmhouse food, and we decided to buy some corn to take home. This kind of organic produce sells for a steep price. There's a metal fence around the cornfield and someone assigned to keep watch. That day, the guy guarding it was my cousin. He went back home for a nap and asked me to keep an eye on things while he rested. Standing in this sea of lush corn, next to Ryan with his muscled arms and tight tank top, my thoughts turned wicked. Overcome by a certain heat, I'd invited him to roleplay that infamous red sorghum scene with me. I never imagined we'd run into Ethan here. Ethan stared at me for a long moment, then sighed heavily. The economy's been rough these past 2 years. It's hard for new grads to find work. But even so, Zoe, you didn't have to stoop to this. If I'd known it would come to this, I wouldn't have let you go so easily. He paused, then added, Our company's hiring a few interns this year. You should come apply. Oh, but one thing, you'd be working under Wendy. He said it with the air of someone doing me a favor, his voice full of well-meaning concern. Zoe, don't let your pride get in the way. These days, having a stable job is everything. You went to a good university. There's no reason for you to be out here picking corn. Just as he finished speaking, the corn stalks behind me parted again. Ryan stepped out hesitantly, both hands on his belt. Are we really going to do this here? Ryan whispered nervously. This feels a little too intense. The moment he saw Ethan standing in front of me, Ryan jumped in shock. Who's he? Ethan looked just as startled. Who are you? The two of them stared each other down. Ryan was shirtless under the hot sun, wearing only a pair of black shorts, broad shoulders, narrow waist, tall and lean. His abs were sharply defined, and the muscle line just below his 8-pack led naturally into the V shape at his hips. Beneath that, his shorts bulged noticeably at the front. Ethan's pupils contracted. He immediately understood what had been going on just moments before. His voice was full of disbelief. You were about to do it, here? Ryan's face flushed bright red, burning hot. He stammered, waving his hands. No, don't say that. Zoe would never. She's not that kind of person. He stepped protectively beside me, trying to shield me, but as he moved, something fell from his pocket. A square plastic wrapper. Bold letters on the package read XL size. Ryan immediately stepped on it, pretending nothing had happened. Ethan's eyebrow twitched violently, his eyes cut toward me like blades. Zoe, you'd better explain this. Explain what exactly? Who even are you to me anymore? I pushed Ryan aside and picked up the wrapper. What a disaster. Let's go. Ryan let out a breath of relief. Told you we shouldn't do it here. Someone was bound to show up. He looked guilty and grabbed my hand, ready to bolt. But Ethan stepped in front of us, blocking the way. He jerked his chin toward Ryan. Is he your boyfriend? Fiancé? Ryan said quickly, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. He suddenly sensed something off between me and Ethan. Confused, he turned to me. Babe, who is this guy? I replied casually. Just an old classmate from the village. Old classmate? Ethan's face darkened. He let out a scoff, half laughing in disbelief. I'm Ethan Cooper. You've never heard my name before, even though you're her fiancé? Ryan blinked in realization. Oh, you're the guy who hooked up with your roommate behind her back, right? Yeah, I can see it now. Ethan's face twisted with rage. Watch your mouth, I never. Before he could finish, the cornstalks rustled again behind him. Out popped a young woman wearing a white sunproof jacket and a baseball cap. Ethan, you walk so fast. You didn't even wait for me, she called out cheerfully. The moment she saw my face, her voice caught in her throat. Zoe? Wendy gasped in surprise. Ethan was mid-rage but instantly changed his tone. He casually threw an arm around Wendy's shoulders and introduced her, face still cold. This is Wendy, my girlfriend. Ryan gave a meaningful, oh, nodding slowly. The one who stole her best friend's boyfriend. Wendy froze, stunned. She looked up at Ethan, then turned to me, then sized up Ryan. Her eyes darted frantically back and forth between the three of us. After a long, tense pause, she gave a helpless smile and said, It's been so long, Zoe. We were all just young and immature back then. You were stubborn and wouldn't let us explain. But honestly, nothing happened between me and Ethan back then. Let's just leave the past in the past. Can we all be friends again? Sorry, I said coolly, cutting her off. I'm busy. Don't have time for new friends. With that, I turned away and left with Ryan. Even after we got home, I was still fuming. Ryan tried to joke with me a few times, but I just kept a straight face, ignoring him completely. Then he suddenly cleared his throat and knocked hard on the bedroom door. Excuse me, Miss Jian, he said in a deep, exaggerated voice. Did your household request plumbing service? I looked up. Ryan was wearing a pair of camouflage utility pants, and the thin white tank top clinging to his skin barely concealed the defined contours of his muscles. My eyes lit up. All my anger evaporated in an instant, replaced by a different kind of fire, hotter, deeper. I dropped onto the couch, crossed one leg over the other, and crooked a finger at him. Come here. When I first met Ryan, he was working at an auto shop, bent over the hood of a car with the front popped open, his back to the door. Camouflage pants, white tank top, his shirt had ridden up just enough to reveal a lean, powerful waist. He straightened up when he heard me come in, his face full of impatience and a bit of irritation. Took you long enough. He was tall, with sharp features and a rebellious air. Every inch of him screamed wild. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Deep inside, a little voice shouted, This is the rough guy you've been waiting for. You've never dated one. Go for it. And just the day before, I'd told my mom that all those years of youth were wasted, that I'd never fall in love again. But in that moment, my youth came rushing back to life. Blushing, Ryan had apologized to me. Sorry, I thought you were someone my friend sent. I was blushing too, eyes shining. Hey, I need my car fixed. He hesitated, then glanced down at the tiny electric scooter between my legs. We don't fix scooters? My car's broken, I said quickly. It's at home. Can you come over and check it out? Ryan hesitated for a good while before reluctantly nodding. So I gave him a ride home on my scooter. The summer night breeze was warm and thick. The scooter was small, the space cramped. Ryan's long legs had nowhere to go, his knees pressed up against my thighs. It felt like I was practically sitting in his lap. The ride shook my thoughts and my heart beat like the wind stirred my hair. Those 20 minutes flew by. It wasn't until we arrived downstairs at my place that I suddenly realized I didn't have a car. My family had given me one when I graduated college, but I'd left it in Hongcheng. After the breakup with Ethan, I ran off 1,000 kilometers away to a completely new city. Once I got there, I fell into a slump. I hadn't even found a job yet, let alone figured out transportation. I stood awkwardly at the entrance of my apartment complex, sweating bullets. Should I just drag him into the basement and point to a random car? Forget it. One lie always needs 10 more to cover it. Ashamed, I looked at Ryan and confessed, I'm sorry. I don't have a car. Ryan stayed seated on the scooter, one leg stretched to the ground. He tilted his head and smiled, his deep eyes sparkling like stars. That's okay. I'm not the shop owner anyway, it's my friend's place. I looked up in surprise and our eyes met midair. We both laughed, and I knew right then and there, he wasn't exactly a good guy either. From his name to his vibe, Ryan was every bit as wild and rough as I imagined. But once we actually started dating, I realized he wasn't nearly as chaotic as I'd thought. On the contrary, he was incredibly detail-oriented, cautious in everything he did. When we walked down the street, he'd always pull me to the inside, away from traffic. Before eating with me for the first time, he didn't just ask what I liked, he asked about allergies too. Before bed, he made sure every door and window was locked. If I used a rideshare app, he'd make me send him the license plate before I got in the car. He didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't stay up late. He went to bed at 11 and got up at 7 sharp to go running. His routine was as strict as a retiree's. It made life with him feel very safe and grounded. But emotionally, he was lacking a bit, because unbelievably, he was ridiculously easy to embarrass. Despite looking like a rugged, unshakable man, he'd blush the moment I teased him. Ryan always got flustered whenever I made unreasonable requests, like some proper housewife being teased. But this time he was actually playing along, which instantly made me forget all the unpleasant things from earlier. I threw myself into the act with full enthusiasm. You must be a college student doing part-time work, huh? I haven't seen you around before, I said. Blushing, Ryan nodded. My dad's not feeling well, so I came in his place. Well, have a seat. I'll get you some water, I offered. I walked over to the dining table, deliberately sticking my butt out as I reached for a glass. Suddenly, a hot hand slipped around from behind, wrapping around my waist. My rules, he whispered, his voice husky against my ear. Payment before service. Ryan's broad chest pressed against my back, pinning me against the edge of the table. Miss Jiang, where are you hiding the money? His warm breath brushed along my sensitive ear and the side of my neck, sending a wave of shivers down my spine. My knees went weak. I shakily set the glass down, struggling to breathe. He leaned in closer, his voice rougher. Not talking? Guess I'll find it myself. His hand slid from my waist around to the front, long fingers slipping beneath the edge of my clothes. My breath hitched. I pretended to struggle. What are you doing? Let go. Ryan held me firmly in place, and just like that, we tumbled into chaos right beside the dining table. Wild, breathless, wrapped up in each other until we lost all sense of time and place. Eventually, I couldn't take any more. I cried and begged him for mercy. Ryan chuckled low in his throat. Didn't you say I wasn't manly enough for you? I shoved him hard. Okay. You're too much. Get out. Near the village, there was a forested mountain with a waterfall. The locals used to take it for granted, but lately it had become a popular hiking spot. Ryan loved that kind of thing. So the next morning, we set off early to explore it. We hadn't been walking long when, during a break by the roadside, 2 familiar figures appeared behind us. I put down my sandwich and lifted my hand to shield my eyes. Not them again. What rotten luck. The 2 of them sat down on a boulder nearby. Ryan nudged my leg with his knee. If they ruin your mood again, I'll make it up to you tonight. I clenched my fingers. The same kind of make it up like yesterday? As I said it, I watched the tips of Ryan's ears turn redder and redder. I couldn't help but grin. You're finally getting bold. What are you talking about? He asked, flustered. Why are you smiling like that? Out of breath, Ethan suddenly chimed in as he set up his hiking poles. You're still just as playful as ever, Zoe. Wendy, sitting beside him, was clearly in a bad mood. Her delicate brows were furrowed, though she forced a stiff smile. What a coincidence. I had no interest in engaging with them, but Ethan kept tailing us the entire hike, constantly trying to insert himself into the conversation. Your stamina's improved a lot, he said. I still remember when we went to Mount Huangshan in college. You insisted on taking the cable car, and after a few steps on the mountain path, you were begging me to carry you. There was a soft smile on his lips, as if he was lost in some nostalgic dream. Wendy sneered. Well, she's been living in the countryside. Makes sense, right? Probably out in the fields every day. Ethan quickly adjusted his tone, sighing deeply before launching into his next attempt to convince me. Zoe, come back with us. You're not that young anymore. It's time to start thinking seriously about your future. The trail had no paved stairs, just rugged dirt paths winding through dense vegetation. Ryan was up ahead, scouting the way with his hiking stick. Ethan lowered his voice and muttered, "He's not right for you. You were raised soft, you've never suffered. How could you handle a life like this?" "What the hell does that have to do with you?" I snapped. Then I picked up my pace and caught up to Ryan. I grabbed Ryan's hand and whined, "I'm so tired. I can't walk anymore." He crouched down in front of me. "Hop on." I immediately jumped on his back, wrapping my arms tightly around his neck. Ethan came to a stop under the shade of a tree, his expression unreadable and shifting between dark and conflicted. Wendy had fallen behind. She called out repeatedly, "Ethan, wait for me. I'm tired too. Can you give me a hand?" Ethan, clearly annoyed, snapped, "If you're that tired, just go back." After more than 2 hours of hiking, we finally reached our destination, a deep emerald pool nestled in the mountains. A thundering waterfall crashed down into it, breaking apart the jade-colored surface with sheer force. Mist rose up and swept across our faces, cool and fresh with the scent of the wild. It washed away the heavy heat of summer in an instant. I took a few steps forward and gasped. The water's so clear, it must be freezing. I bent down to dip my hand into the pool. "Careful," Ryan said from beside me. "The rocks are slippery. They've got moss on them." Before he could finish, Wendy screamed as she slid down behind us, colliding directly with my back and sending me flying into the water. I didn't know how to swim, and of course, just my luck, when I hit the water, I instinctively flailed. My head smacked against a rock. Everything went black. When I came to, I was already in a hospital bed. Someone was sleeping beside me, head resting against my arm, their hair tickling my skin. I reached out to nudge him. "Ryan, I'm so thirsty." The man looked up, and I froze. "Ethan, what the hell are you doing here?" He looked disheveled, dark stubble on his face, his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, he stared at me in a daze, then suddenly grabbed my hand with trembling excitement. "Zoe, you're awake. Thank God," he cried and immediately pulled me into a tight hug, his voice breaking. "I thought I was going to lose you." I struggled against him. "What are you doing? Let go." But I didn't know why. My body was weak and limp. I couldn't muster any strength, and even my voice was faint. Ethan held me tighter, arms wrapped firmly around my waist. "You have no idea what these past few days have been like for me." I finally summoned every ounce of strength I had, pushed him off, and slapped him hard across the face. Smack. The sound echoed. Ethan froze. His lips trembled slightly, his eyes filled with guilt and remorse. "I'm not with Wendy," he said quietly. "We've never been together. Not in all these years. We've only ever been friends." It was like he'd made some kind of decision. He took a deep breath, his dark eyes locked onto mine. "Zoe, I've been waiting for you." It hit me like a thunderclap straight overhead. I stared at him in disbelief. I looked down at my hand and muttered, "So what? I slapped you and now you're satisfied? What the hell is wrong with you?" "I have a boyfriend." Ethan's face grew somber. "I know. That only made me more confused." "Then what? Are you into humiliation or something?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Zoe, my feelings for you never went away. That day was a mistake. I only said Wendy was my girlfriend because I was angry, furious that you'd lower yourself and date a guy like that. On the mountain, I kept watching you, trying to see if you'd get jealous. I wanted to know if you still cared." His voice trembled. "But when I saw you fall into that pool, in that moment, everything in me snapped. I've never been so sure about anything in my life. I love you, Zoe. I always have." His voice was full of raw emotion and clarity. Then, just like that, he opened his arms and tried to hug me again. I immediately grabbed the banana from the bedside table, held it like a weapon, and snapped. "Come one step closer, and I swear I'll stab you with this." "What about Ryan?" I asked. Ethan didn't answer. He just kept staring at me with that same earnest look. "You never let me explain," he said softly. "There was never anything between me and Wendy. Not once. She was always just an extension of you in my eyes. I only saw her differently because of you. Nothing more." Unbelievable. I stared at him, completely stunned. Had he lost his mind? Wendy, just an accessory of mine? How did he even have the nerve to say that? How many times had he left me alone because of her? I still remembered one particular time. Ethan had been driving me to a countryside inn for lunch. Just as we arrived, Wendy called him in tears, saying she'd made a serious mistake at work. Ethan, irritated, snapped at her on the phone. "Are you stupid?" I'm gone for one day and you managed to screw up this badly? What would you do without me? And then, just like that, he started turning the car around. That inn was way out in the boonies. It had taken us over 2 hours to get there. It was almost 1 p.m. By the time we arrived, and I hadn't even had breakfast. I was so hungry my stomach hurt. And Ethan was going to just leave. I lost it. I'm not going. You want to leave me starving out here? Go by yourself if you want to. But to my shock, he actually shut the car door. Then stay and eat something. Rest up a bit, call a cab when you're done. I have to go help Wendy. And then he drove off. My phone was still in the car. I didn't even have money to pay for a meal. In the end, I had to borrow the phone from the inn owner to call a friend. I didn't make it back until after dark. He had dismissed my feelings time and time again for Wendy. And now, standing here, he had the audacity to act righteous and say he'd only ever seen her as a friend, that he'd liked me all these years, that he never once truly looked at her. If that's how he treated his friends, I wanted nothing to do with his idea of friendship. I honestly couldn't understand how Ethan's brain worked, and at this point, I didn't care to. I slammed the call button on the bedside. Nurse. Nurse. A nurse rushed in. Oh, Miss Zhang, you're finally awake. That's wonderful. Your boyfriend stayed with you every day. We couldn't get him to leave. Everyone in the ward was jealous. She went on gushing about how devoted Ethan had been, saying how lucky I was to be rescued in time. The more I listened, the more confused I got. Wasn't it just a bump on the head? Why all the drama? But the nurse shook her head. It wasn't the impact. You were bitten by a venomous snake. Seriously? It was just my luck. When I fell into the pool, I had landed right on a snake without noticing. Startled, the snake lashed out and bit me. At first, no one realized what had happened, but then Ethan noticed something was wrong with my face. He found 2 tiny puncture marks on my arm. We'd both grown up coming to this village in the summers. The elders always warned us never to go into the back mountains in hot weather. The snakes up there were extremely venomous. We'd seen people get bitten before, wounds turning black and rotting, and if they weren't treated fast enough, they'd lose entire limbs. So Ethan didn't hesitate. He tied a tourniquet above my arm, slung me over his back, and sprinted down the mountain. He drove me straight to the nearest county hospital. After some emergency care, he arranged for me to be transferred to a bigger hospital, where they finally gave me the anti-venom injection. No matter what else had happened, Ethan had saved my life. I looked at him, a swirl of emotions churning in my chest. Ethan glanced at my face, cautiously reading my expression. You're probably hungry. The nurse said you could have some millet porridge now that you're awake. I'll go downstairs and buy you some porridge. No need. I looked at him. Where's Ryan? The moment his name left my mouth, Ethan's face turned cold. That boyfriend of yours? Let's just say, forget about him. Ethan said. At first, Ryan didn't even believe you'd been bitten by a snake. He hesitated, wasted time. When we finally got down the mountain, he answered a phone call, then told me he had urgent business to take care of. And then he ran off. He hasn't shown up since. Not a single call all week. Ethan paused and added, My guess? He didn't want to be the one paying for your medical bills. He leaned in slightly, trying to sound sincere. Zoe, guys like that are fun for a while, but they're not built for real life. No responsibility. How can you build a future with someone like that? I'm not trying to badmouth him in front of you, really. It's just, when you were unconscious, the doctor warned us about all the worst-case scenarios. If the neurotoxin had reached your brain, it could have caused paralysis. He didn't have the strength to face that kind of risk. Fear and running away are understandable for someone like him. Ethan gently added, just rest for now, and maybe take some time to think about your relationship. Even if you're not ready to accept me again as your friend, I have to tell you, don't go back to Ryan. After Ethan left, my head spun. Ryan would never. Was he really that heartless? Just stood there and let Ethan carry me down the mountain, then turned and ran? And that part about being afraid to pay medical bills? What a joke. Ethan had no idea what Ryan's situation was like. This was the same man whose hobby was restoring Ferraris, and he was worried about hospital fees. I searched the room for my phone, but it was nowhere in sight. I went out to ask a nurse and borrowed one of their phones to call Ryan. He picked up almost immediately. His voice sounded tired. Hello? Just hearing his voice made my lips curve into a smile without meaning to. Mr. Chen, my pipes are broken again. Zoe, you're awake. His voice brightened instantly. How do you feel? If you're joking like that, your brain must still be working fine. Wait for me. I just need to finish something here, then I'll come right away. No rush, I said, but I'm curious. Where are you? What's going on? I'm at the clinic, he replied. A lot's happened these past few days. It's a long story. I'll explain everything tonight. After he hung up, I wandered the hallway a bit. I still felt weak, so I eventually made my way back to bed. Ethan, ever thoughtful, had brought me millet porridge and insisted on feeding me himself. I turned my head away. Just leave it. I'll eat on my own. His expression dimmed. Okay. After I finished eating, he said he needed to head back to the office and catch up on work he'd missed the past few days. If you need anything, he said, call me. Where's my phone? Oh, it fell into the pool. I bought you a new one. He handed me the latest iPhone model. All the apps were already installed, but when I opened the contact list in WeChat, there was only one person in it, Ethan. I must have made a face because he chuckled softly and reached out to pat my head. Don't worry, we can sync your contacts later. I didn't know how to respond. Ethan had saved my life. He'd taken care of me for days. I couldn't bring myself to be cold to him. But getting close again? That didn't feel right either. Only after he left did I finally feel a sense of relief. I lay back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. Why wasn't Ryan here with me at the hospital? What exactly was he doing at that clinic? Especially when the nurses had all looked at Ethan with those starry, envious eyes. These past few days, Ethan really had been by my side, non-stop, taking care of me without a break. He wasn't as unbearable as I'd remembered. I was still lost in thought when the door opened, and someone walked in. I sat up. The moment I saw who it was, tears welled up instantly. I opened my arms toward Ryan, feeling overwhelmed and vulnerable. Babe. He was wearing a black suit for once, looking completely worn out, dust still clinging to him, not bothering to clean up. As he walked to the bed, I leapt into his arms, wrapping my legs tightly around his waist. He staggered back a step. How are you heavier after being starved for days? Maybe your arms just got weaker, I teased. You've lost weight. I squeezed his arm. Are you tired? Ryan sat down with me on the sofa, cradling me gently. Not physically, mentally, exhausted. You have no idea what I've been through. And then, from Ryan, I finally heard the truth. It was him who noticed the snakebite on my arm. It was him who carried me down the mountain in one frantic 2-hour sprint. It was him who arranged my hospital transfer. He didn't collapse until everything had been handled. He'd been holding it together with sheer willpower. Once I was stabilized, Ryan passed out from exhaustion. The hospital contacted his family, and his father came and transferred him to a private clinic. After getting some fluids and a proper night's sleep, he finally woke up. Ryan had wanted to return to Hongcheng to take care of me, but his father wouldn't allow it. You've been running wild long enough. This time, you're staying home with me. I'm getting older. Sooner or later, the company will be yours. Ryan's mom had passed away from illness when he was 15. Less than a year later, his dad remarried his secretary, no less. Ryan resented that deeply, and their relationship had been rocky ever since. After college, Ryan left for the capital and spent his days hanging around a friend's auto shop. His dad had tried many times to bring him back, but nothing worked, until now. This time, his father made him an offer. I just acquired a company in Hongcheng. You stay here and get familiar with the business. I'll transfer it to your name. Full ownership, full profits. Even your stepmom won't have a say. Ryan scowled. I don't want your money. And what about your girlfriend? Don't you want her? How are you going to marry her? Build a home? Raise kids in a stable environment? What kind of future can you offer her with your car repairs? How much money can you really make from that? Reluctantly, Ryan agreed. He stayed in town to get up to speed on the company's operations and handle the transition. Rubbing his temples, Ryan muttered, Who even understands what's happening anymore? First, my dad forces a company on me, wires billions into my account as startup capital. And then out of nowhere, someone else tries to shove $500,000 at me just to make me break up with you. He squinted at me suspiciously. Zoe, am I having some weird financial luck lately? I sat up straighter. Wait, what do you mean? $500,000? Are you saying Ethan offered you that? Ryan nodded. Who else could it be? I blinked, then burst out laughing. Wow, classic power move CEO. No wonder Ethan was so bold with his lies. He must have assumed Ryan was just some cornfield laborer. To him, 500,000, or roughly $70,000, was enough to buy someone off. Pay Ryan to walk away, and no one would question the story he spun. I couldn't help but marvel. Well, I'll give him this. His work ethic must be solid. Pulling together that much cash on short notice, not bad. Ryan narrowed his eyes, his hand sliding around my waist with a hint of warning. Don't praise your ex-boyfriend in front of me. I cupped his face in my hands and kissed him. Of course not. You're the best. Speaking of which, how much money did your dad wire you exactly? Hurry and show me. Let me count the balance. I've never seen that much money in my life. I grabbed Ryan's phone, opened his mobile banking app, and stared wide-eyed at the screen. Tens, hundreds, thousands, millions. Babe, Ryan held me in his arms, a little distracted. Say that again. This is a hospital. Behave yourself. I slapped his hand away. We squeezed together on the tiny hospital sofa and slept like that all night. The next morning, we went through the discharge process. I immediately listed the phone Ethan had given me on a second-hand marketplace. Honestly, I'd wanted to confront him in person and expose all his lies, but I'd been far too busy these days. Busy decorating the mansion Ryan had bought in advance, busy attending meetings with him at his company. When we arrived at the office building, I even stepped back to double-check the sign. Haisheng Group. This was the small business Ethan had mocked? Ryan nodded casually. They had solid operations, but the old owner got caught up in some gambling scam in Macau. I picked it up cheap. My heart thumped with anticipation. Let's go. Time for the meeting. Today, I was the leading lady in my own story. Everything felt like a novel. We walked through the lobby, welcomed by 2 rows of employees who shouted in unison, "Good morning, President Chen." When Ethan finally looked up and saw Ryan's face clearly, all the color drained from his cheeks. His lips trembled, and his eyes looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Beside him, Wendy suddenly shrieked, then burst into hysterical laughter, clutching her stomach as tears streamed down her cheeks. This is the poor loser you talked about?" She choked out. "And you wanted me to be generous? Wish you 2 happiness? You said you'd fight to get me the position for the overseas program?" She laughed harder, like a mad woman. "Well, here's my blessing. I bless you. I bless you both." The rest of the employees looked at each other, completely confused and awkward. Ryan frowned and asked, "Who let people like this into the company? Who hired them?" He pointed at Ethan. "By tomorrow, I don't want to see either of them here." Ethan stood frozen, staring at Ryan in a daze, the conversation they'd had earlier looping over and over in his mind. 50 grand isn't a small sum for you. You'd never make that in 10 years. Take it and go home. Zoe's not someone you can handle. Now it felt like a slap to the face. His cheeks stung, numb and swollen. His throat tightened. He couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I tossed in a final jab. "Ethan, all that worrying was for nothing. Ryan could afford the medical bills just fine." Ethan let out a strangled cry, clutching his head in shame, and bolted out of the building. The 2 of them packed up their things that very afternoon. Both were officially fired. I never saw them again. Later, I heard from a classmate that Wendy hadn't been much of a worker to begin with. She only kept her job at Haisheng because Ethan had her back. After losing that support, she tried to job hunt with the same high expectations, unsuccessfully. She wasted more than a year before finally settling for a generic private company. But her ambition far exceeded her actual ability. It didn't take long before she was fired again. Eventually, with nowhere else to go in Hongcheng, she returned to her hometown in defeat. Ethan had slightly better luck at first, but for some baffling reason, he kept showing up at Ryan's company to follow me around. Security got nervous, thinking he held a grudge over being fired. One day, they secretly detained him and called the police. He was held for 7 days. After that, Ethan left the city. Before he did, he sent me a long text message. Ryan was pretending to watch TV, but one eye kept flicking toward my phone screen. I deleted the message without even opening it. "Too long. Didn't read," I said. I'm not wasting even a second of my life on someone who's not worth it. The corner of Ryan's lips twitched upward as he tried to hide a smile. I glanced at the TV screen, puzzled. Is The Lord of the Rings really that funny? He took my hand and gently laced our fingers together. Not funny. I just feel really, really happy. The end. Thanks for reading.